Hey, everybody. As some of you may know, the White House recently signed new Social Security legislation in January 2025. So, today I wanted to go over the implications for those positively impacted and the repercussions on an already strained Social Security trust fund. So, the bill was signed into law by President Biden on January 5th. The bill eliminated two provisions: the Government Pension Offset, or GPO, and the Windfall Elimination Provision, or WEP. These provisions were initially introduced to prevent individuals, particularly those employed by jobs that didn't contribute to Social Security via payroll taxes, from unfairly receiving full Social Security retirement benefits while also collecting a generous government pension. However, critics felt the offsets went too far. It was an administrative nightmare for the Social Security Administration, or SSA, and ultimately disincentivized individuals from pursuing career in public service. The provisions were deeply unpopular with key constituencies such as the police and teacher unions, as their members were disproportionately affected. So, for today, I want to discuss four topics. Number one, I'll explain how taxpayers' Social Security retirement benefits are calculated. Number two, I'll explain the WEP. Number three, I'll explain the GPO. And then lastly, I'll discuss the implications from the act and some action items for those impacted. So, the SSA's first step in determining your retirement benefits is calculating your average indexed monthly earnings, or AIME. There are three steps in this calculation. The first is to identify your 35 highest earning years and the index factor associated with those specific calendar years. Earnings are indexed or multiplied by the associated factor to remain competitive with inflation over the 3.5 decades of your earnings career. The index factor is specifically tied to the year in which you turned 62 and can be found online. In the example to the right, this individual turned 62 in 2025. Also worth noting that earnings after age 59 are not adjusted for inflation, thus have an index factor of 1, as seen in years 2023 and 2024 to the right. Next, you multiply the earnings by the index factor. Number three, you add the 35 years of indexed income and divide by 420, which is 35 years times 12 months, to get your AIME. Next, the SSA runs your AIME through their bend point calculation. As you can see in the table, the first $1,226 of average earnings sees a 90% replacement rate. The next $6,164 sees a 32% replacement. And then any average earnings above $7,392 has a 15% replacement rate. Let's do an example. We'll use our loyal hypothetical client, Robert Retiree. For simplicity, let's assume he's earned $60,000 a year for his 35-year career. His lifetime earnings would be $2.1 million. You then divide that by 420 months to get his $5,000 of AIME. If we look at the first bend point, 90% of his first $1,226 of average earnings is $1,103.40, and then 32% of his remaining $3,774 of average earnings is replaced for $1,207.68. You add these two up to get Robert's primary insurance amount of $2,311.08 per month at his full retirement age, or a 46.22% replacement of his AIME. It's important to note that similar to the federal tax system, the Social Security system is progressive, meaning that the less money you make, the higher percentage of your income will be replaced when you claim benefits, which takes us to the next example. Again, Robert on the left with a 46.22% replacement rate. But now let's look at John Doe on the right, who is a higher earner and has an AIME of $10,000. If you run his income through the bend points, you will see that only 34.67% of his average earnings is replaced. This is an important concept to understand as I introduce the windfall elimination provision momentarily. One more example, and let's tweak the numbers a little bit. Let's assume Robert and John have the same lifetime earnings of $4.2 million, which is $120,000 a year for 35 years. However, Robert spent 20 years in the private sector and then had a career change and did 15 years at a government job that didn't pay into Social Security. From the SSA's perspective, those 15 years on Robert's earnings history would simply be given a zero when calculating his AIME, artificially classifying him as a low income earner, even though he was doing very well for himself just at a job where he didn't pay Social Security taxes. You can see Robert's AIME would not be $10,000 like John's, but $5,714 due to the 15 years of no tax being paid into the Social Security Trust Fund, instead of only 34.67% of his income being replaced like John's. 44.45% of his AIME is replaced. Now, Robert's government pension would only need to exceed $927.82 per month for him to unfairly receive a higher retirement benefit, even though he and John have the same exact lifetime earnings. The potential for an unfair benefit is what Congress set out to correct in 1983 when it introduced the Windfall Elimination Provision. For those that had less than 30 years in a covered job and were given zeros for years they did not contribute to Social Security, the WEP would reduce their first bend point, which traditionally starts at 90% for taxpayers. As you can see in the table on the right, if an individual had 30 years of coverage paying Social Security taxes, their first bend point would remain at 90%. However, this begins decreasing in increments of 5% for each year less than 30 spent in a covered job. The first bend point could go as low as 40% for those that have 20 or less years paying into Social Security, and instead of their first bend point replacing $1,103.40, it could replace as low as $490.40. If we revisit the last example in which Robert did 20 years in the private sector and 15 years in a non covered government job, you can see on the right table, his first bend point is now reduced to 40% due to only having 20 years of Social Security taxes paid and the windfall elimination provision. Instead of 44.45% of his AIME being replaced, only 33.72% of it is replaced, and his monthly benefit is reduced by $613, a $7,356 reduction in his annual benefit. One may think, well, that's okay. My spouse is very successful in the private sector. At least I have my spousal benefits. Well, not so fast. Congress was prepared for this as well via the government pension offset. The GPO was initially introduced in 1977 and reduced one's spousal benefit 100% or dollar for dollar by the amount of their non covered government pension, but was later amended in 1983 to only reduce one spousal benefit by 2/3 of their non covered monthly pension. It's worth quickly exploring how spousal benefits work. Generally, a married individual with low lifetime earnings would have a low Social Security retirement benefit, but is eligible for a spousal benefit equal to 50% of their working partner's Social Security monthly benefit. Also, married individuals are entitled to survivor Social Security benefits, meaning that when one spouse passes away, the higher benefit is retained by the survivor and the lower benefit is eliminated, which could be a pretty good retirement benefit for those in a government job that didn't pay into Social Security for the bulk of their career, collect a generous pension, and also their spouse's full Social Security benefit. However, Congress set out to correct this via the GPO legislation. Let's look at an example. Robert receives a $3,000 per month government pension this time around. His wife, Rachel, who contributed to Social Security throughout her career, has a primary insurance amount, or PIA, of $4,200 a month. Initially, you'd think Robert would be entitled to half of Rachel's benefit for a $2,100 a month benefit. However, under the GPO, Robert's spousal benefit is reduced by 2/3 of his government pension, or $2,000. This would have left him with a reduced spousal benefit of $100 per month. For survivor benefits, if Rachel predeceases Roger, we'd assume he'd be able to retain her higher benefit of $4,200 per month. However, the GPO would have reduced his survivor benefit by $2,000, equivalent to 2/3 of his government pension, resulting in a reduced survivor benefit of $2,200 per month. Luckily, For those negatively affected, this can all be forgotten as both the GPO and the WEP are now eliminated. So, what are the implications? Obviously, it's great for those that are or were working in a non covered government job and were expecting or already receiving reduced benefits. These individuals will receive a retroactive payment for calendar year 2024 and will see an increase in their monthly benefit moving forward. Individuals that worked or are working in a non covered government job should now receive clearer communication from the SSA regarding their retirement benefits. There are numerous examples of recipients being mistakenly overpaid, leading to the SSA clawing back already dispersed funds. There are some downsides. The Congressional Budget Office estimates an increase in costs of $195 billion over the next 10 years, likely accelerating the insolvency of the Social Security Trust Fund. Obviously, this increases the uncertainty for young taxpayers like myself, as we have no assurance this benefit would be available for our own retirement. Some takeaways: we may see an increase in retirees or those considering retirement as they see an increase in monthly benefits and cash flow. Those that never filed for benefits because they expected to not receive anything due to the GPO and WEP should immediately apply on SSA.gov. Unfortunately, there is still uncertainty on how the retroactive payments and increased benefits will be administered. However, per the SSA's website, recipients should ensure their mailing address and direct deposit are up to date. Lastly, if you, a friend, or a loved one are impacted by the recent legislation, it's important to revisit your retirement plans with your advisor. Of course, if you have further questions about the Social Security Fairness Act or general questions regarding retirement, please reach out.